the Chenier Plain is 138,000 plus acres of some of the most beautiful marsh that exists on the planet. It's a phenomenally important finfish, crab, and shrimp nursery habitat. We have rice farmers, ranchers. We also have some of the most important energy resources in the United States.
During a hurricane, this is absolutely one of our first lines of defense. The marsh abates potential storm surge that could go into and over the levees. And without the marsh there, not only would you lose production in this industry, but you also could potentially have a release of hazardous chemicals into the ecosystem here. Keeping these marsh in place is all that stands between us and catastrophe.
The Chenier Plain has been degrading gradually since the 1960s. But when Hurricanes Rita and Ike hit, it accelerated the problem even more. How do you restore something of this size and complexity? It can seem pretty overwhelming.
A restoration project of this magnitude takes innovation and elite level problem solving.
There's a lot going on here. Dozens of stakeholder voices, state agencies, federal agencies, local governments, and several NGOs. Not to mention the countless private landowners and the local communities.
Can a partnership with that many stakeholders, with that many voices, work? Well, it is working. We call it the Texas Chenier Plain Restoration Working Group.
Around 2000, the Texas Chenier Plain restoration began with a comprehensive plan, basically a roadmap. At the center of that plan is a partnership that came together to tackle the problems that the Chenier Plain is facing.
Because of the storm surges of Rita and Ike, this marsh was exposed to being underwater for several weeks, and most of these plants are not adapted to those kind of conditions, so they got stressed and a lot of them died off. Dunes were finally washed off and eroded down to nothing, or the storm surge actually lifted chunks of marsh and either washed it further inland or carried it back out to sea.
Our 35 chemical plants make the constituent ingredients for virtually every consumer product made in the United States. This marsh is important in ensuring that that economic activity can continue.
The three projects that have been completed so far are the Keith Lake Fish Pass Baffle, siphons under the Intercoastal Waterway, and the dunes and beach restoration of McFadden National Wildlife Refuge. Those three projects combined are restoring the hydrology and bringing the whole system back into a better balance.
With the Texas Chenier Plain, it is a diverse landscape. There's different interests. There's wildlife interests, fisheries interests, waterfowl interests, industry interests as well. You need all the expertise you can find to make sure you're doing things right.
There's an old quote that I'm fond of. Basically says, imagine all the good things that you can accomplish if you don't worry who gets the credit. And I think this project is an example of that.
Texas General Land Office has been very proud to participate in this work across the Chenier Plain. This can be replicated again, and it can be successful.
Texas is predominantly a private land state, and you can't really do a whole-scale landscape restoration project just on public land. You have to include all the private landowners that have an interest in that as well. And so if you operate our own land in the Texas Chenier Plain, certainly reach out and take advantage of the many conservation plans that are available. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. We have to keep pursuing additional restoration opportunities as well as maintaining the ones we've accomplished. It's important to protect that. Ducks Unlimited is proud to be a part of that effort. There is tremendous support for the Chenier Plain and Salt Biomarsh Restoration Plan. And so I think we have momentum now to keep that going, to build upon the great success we have today.
Well, welcome back, everyone, for the final panel of the day. I hope you have learned a lot and enjoyed meeting new people. I do see a lot of folks standing at the back, which is great if that's your choice. If you do want a seat, we have some seats down here. Just come down these steps right here, and there's plenty right here if you do want a chair. So I'm looking forward, as I mentioned, to this final panel of the day, ecosystem collaboration. For those of you who are online, don't forget to ask your questions on the YouTube stream or at info@texanbynature.org. So today we've heard from leaders in both conservation and industry. We've explored various examples of education, engagement, communication, and collaboration. To end the day, we're going to get more specific in speaking about a landscape scale project, but also more general in talking about decision making as well as larger gaps and opportunities for the future. We'll focus on what it looks like to collaborate for mass ecosystem results. So I know I've had one-on-one conversations with a fair amount of the folks in this audience, and a lot of times we've talked about the language used in business and the language used in conservation. And how, when we talk about inputs, outputs, actions, reactions, there's just a different way of for all of us to think about this. So if I were to ask you to define ecosystem, there's probably about 320 folks in this room right now. I'd probably get 320 different answers if I asked you for that definition, right? So from industry, I would hear about the value chain. Maya used that earlier. I would hear about your partner network. I would hear about your inputs, your outputs, your final product. From our natural resource NGOs, I would hear about habitat. I would hear about the natural resources ecosystems that you work with all the time. And depending on what area of conservation you work on, even those wouldn't be standard. You would define ecosystem depending on your view, your perspective of the world. And so this difference in even defining ecosystem and the goals that we have, it plays out in how we scope our initiatives. It plays out in how we have our conversations. It plays out in how we understand the ultimate impact of our actions. Because without education and communication best practices, without standardized application and availability of data, and deeper partnerships that have been explored today on this stage, how do we move forward instead of just spinning in place? As we've heard from the previous panels, our local efforts have global impact. Other people's local efforts have global impact. We heard about the trash coming into Texas, right? We're known as the trashiest state. Is that all our fault? Probably not. I mean, obviously not. But there are things that we can do to fix that. And so we have an opportunity today to step back and align our language, our goals, and our metrics. Whether we are scoping need or scoping articulation or scoping how we're going to report on the positive impact, this panel will explore that opportunity from all sides. On-the-ground effort, corporate goals and decisions, and then data and collaboration for both. So I'm very excited today that we'll have Kevin Hartke, who is the Manager of Conservation Programs at Ducks Unlimited, Dr. Gabi Farnham, Director of Environmental Data Analytics and Reporting at Phillips 66, and our very own Taylor Keys, Director of Programs at Texan by Nature. So again, let us get started. Kevin, excited for you to come, and for those online, questions go to YouTube or info@texanbynature.org. Kevin.
Well, thanks for, I guess I could give a very appreciative to being here today. I have give a lot of thanks to Texan by Nature, Mrs. Bush and Joni. It's been a great. It's been cool to be here and talk about the Texas Chenier Plain Restoration Partnership and talk about how that came together. And also, I wanted to give a shout out to Caitlin. She's did a great job of keeping DU in lockstep for the past several, I guess, I don't know, almost 12 months, I think, perhaps. And I'm sure there's going to be a great batch of products that will be available for the partnership to use to get the word out beyond this group and beyond the typical partners that are involved in that partnership effort. So I guess I'm going to start off with talking about what is the Cheniere Plain, for those who might not be familiar. So the Cheniere Plain is a geographic area. It includes both, the map is kind of small here, it's hard to see that yellow feature on the map, but it includes both southwest Louisiana and then also overlaps in the Texas between, and for Texas, it's mainly focused in the area between the Louisiana border and the eastern portion of the eastern shore of Galveston Bay. It includes, for the whole Cheniere Plain area, includes over 6.5 million acres, and back in the day, that would have been consisting of mainly marsh, which we still have today, but also it consisted of tall grass prairie, which is one of the most declining habitats out there. Again, so you might be wondering where the word Cheniere comes from, right? So Cheniere is a term from the French, and actually the root is chêne, meaning oak. That's the basic meaning of chêne. And so Cheniere refers to the oak-dominated remnant beach ridges that are across this landscape, and it really is the only elevation that's on this landscape. I remember I mentioned prairies and marsh. That's pretty flat ground. So the only elevation out there are the Cheniere ridges, and you can usually see those by if you've ever been driving through, like between if you've ever been down to visit, like say Texas Point National Wildlife Refuge or McFadden, and you drove down to Sabine Pass and drove along along that highway, that road, that Highway 87 is on one of those Cheniere ridges, and that's where most of the highways that are traverse this landscape, they're on those Cheniere ridges, and you'll see oaks along that. So why is this landscape important? Well, it does provide a lot of benefits to people and wildlife. First off, it provides a lot of coastal protection for coastal communities that are further inland. The Cheniere Plain and those ridges and all the vegetation in that coastal marsh is the first line of defense. And it's a natural defense against storm surge and for those coastal communities. That vegetation and the distance that you have between a coastal community and the Gulf shoreline, that distance of vegetation just helps reduce the impacts of storm surge. It reduces that wave energy and also helps lower the elevation of the storm surge. So it can have some beneficial impacts to lower risks and damages. It's also a home to a very extensive fisheries, and provides recreational commercial opportunities for harvesting fish. These marshes provide nursery for larval fish, and also for adult fish for feeding and feeding grounds. It's also teeming with wildlife. There's lots of birds that use this habitat. Almost just over 360 bird species use the habitat in the wetlands for migrating, for wintering and breeding. And also people come to this area to view these birds and also recreationally hunt them as well. And speaking of waterfowl, over 1 million birds winter in this area annually. It also provides commercial benefits. This area is a thriving coastal economy. It has energy and chemical infrastructure, military installations, also, like I said, a seafood industry and recreational fishing, marine transportation and shipbuilding, and also ecotourism. The former prairies of the Cheniere Plain also produce rice, crawfish, and cattle, what I like to call the gumbo and barbecue flavors of, provides some to all the folks who like to eat those foods. Also, the region's ports are instrumental in moving lots of products in and out that are of the area that are important to the nation and also the global economy. But but with all these important things, there's also there's degradation that's going on, and you saw some of that talk about from the 3 folks, or actually 4 folks in the video. And one of the major impacts to that marsh habitat is the Gulf Intercoastal Waterway and other dredging projects and dewatering projects that have occurred over time by man. These man-made impacts have also been exacerbated by natural ones, such as relative sea level rise and also hurricanes that come through and impact that marsh. So how do we fix this damage? Well, you can't do this in a vacuum. It can't be done by any singular person. It does require a multiple partnership. And like Todd said in the video, that partnership started within a smaller area of the Chenier Plain on the Salt Bayou watershed. And that working group came together with these agencies here, their logo here. They started that partnership and they started identifying the projects that could have some major influences, major benefits to the habitat. And they started working on those over time. So what is the Salt Bayou watershed? That geographic area is here in the black. This is why they picked this area first, because it was already under public ownership, had already been somewhat protected. It's made up of McFadden National Wildlife Refuge and also J.D. Murphy Wildlife Management Area and CRM State Park, and those areas represent 140,000 acres. So it's a good place to start. These are also areas where they could see where impacts are happening over time. And so they identified the issues on these areas and they identified the strategies. And they also developed these strategies with the stakeholders in mind, making sure that they align with their goals as well. And so over 20 years, this effort has accomplished 90,000 acres of improvements and enhancements and restoration to the Chenier Plain area in Texas. And these projects on the right are just some of the examples of big projects that have been put into place. And I know some of them are mentioned in the video as well. And so these projects improve freshwater inflows, they decrease salinities in this marsh. It's also impacting all that vegetation. And also helps, in some cases, there's using beneficial use of dredge material in a way to build up the marsh and to restore that vegetation. And also using the shoreline protection features such as rock breakwaters along the GIW to protect those shorelines from erosion. But there's more work to do. I mean, this is a big area, and this partnership, starting from the Salt Bayou Working Group, they see the need to expand that partnership effort to a greater area, and so that's what kind of was the impetus for the creation of the Texas Chenier Plain Restoration Partnership as well. And so many projects have been already identified to help out this area. They've been identified as Tier 1 projects in the Texas Coastal Resiliency Master Plan developed by the Texas General Land Office. And DU and these partners are actively trying to move some of these projects forward and have plans to restore another 6,000 acres or so in this area within the next 5 years. And so I guess in closing, I'd just like to let everybody know that, you know, this is not just the Ducks Unlimited program, right? This is something that we are involved in as part of a much larger effort. It involves a lot of state agencies, federal agencies, both regulatory and conservation-minded folks, and also it can include municipalities, local governments. Jefferson County was very instrumental to this partnership, and also the judge. He was very instrumental in ways that he had, ways to reach out beyond the typical partners that I myself might deal with on a day-to-day basis and help this partnership get beyond outside the typical circles that maybe a refuge manager or WMA manager works within. And so I think it's also there's an opportunity to take this model and repeat it across not only the Texas coast, but also with other areas of Texas and the Gulf Coast. And like everybody, I mean, there's been multiple presentations you've seen today that talk about partnerships, and everybody has their own, each partnership's a little bit different each way, but I guess the key that you've been hearing today all throughout the day is that big problems require multiple folks to work together, come to an agreement on a solution, and to help enact that solution. And so, I guess in closing, it will take some time, but it's always a worthwhile effort, and especially if you're dedicated and motivated to get the work done. Thanks.
Hello, I am Gabi Farnham, and I am honored to be here to represent Phillips 66. Thank you to Texan by Nature for the invitation. I'll also say, as the daughter of a children's librarian, I feel like I have a hero here in the front row, so thank you to Mrs. Bush as well. So we're going to talk a little differently today. We had one question this morning of how do you get money for urban development or urban biodiversity. So we're going to look a little bit at it from a lens of Phillips 66 and how that might help inform you of how you can get money from other companies. Let me get my clicker going here. First, let me talk to you about our partnership with Ducks Unlimited. It's just an absolutely excellent partner. We are very proud to have worked with Ducks Unlimited since Phillips 66 became a company. So that was in 2013. So if I just run you through some of the by the numbers with Ducks Unlimited. We actually partnered with Ducks Unlimited through our heritage companies since 1990, so it's a very long established partnership. But as Phillips 66, we have donated $4.3 million in funding to the Ducks Unlimited efforts. And Ducks Unlimited has done just a fabulous job enacting 33 projects across 11 states with those dollars, and that has positively impacted more than 35,000 acres for conservation through the partnership with Phillips 66. Let me emphasize that is not all that Ducks Unlimited, the reach is much larger of that organization. This is by the numbers with Phillips 66. We talk internally about the and. So we talk about a park might be developed and that park can be used for educational needs in the community, and it can be a public space that our communities can enjoy, and it can be flood prevention for our operations in that area. Ducks Unlimited, I think, is a great example of the and. So they are working to protect the ducks, work on those ecosystems, and that generates a space that can be used by the public, and it can be used by our hunters that are some of our greatest conservationists. So those are some of the things that we're looking for when we're looking for that and. We're also looking for groups that can deliver at scale, are non-litigious and apolitical. That may differ a little bit, I'm just speaking for Phillips 66 there, and we are looking for organizations that are mission-driven for the environment and who can measure their impact. So that's something that's important to us. For Phillips 66, for our social impact, we have 4 pillars that we use for that. We believe that as a company, if we have resilient communities, that helps us to be a resilient company. So these are our 4 pillars: education, equity, safety and well-being, environment, and social advancement. This is an answer key that as you're looking for people to partner with you and share some of their corporate dollars, generally there will be some form of this with the companies that you're talking to. Ask for their strategies for community giving, how they like to give, or what their pillars are. So this is an answer key you can ask for. I would say too that these develop over time. So if you don't see the niche for your organization in those pillars, advocate, convince them, talk to us about why it would be important. But we have many requests coming in, so we try to stick to these pillars as where we think for Phillips 66 we can have impact, where our communities have need, and where we can partner there. So I've highlighted in red for environment as one of our pillars that I think is most important to highlight for this group. So this is biodiversity and conservation, park, trail, and community garden and green space equity, nature education, and immersion for underprivileged youth. So Phillips 66, I am very proud that our vision is providing energy and improving lives, and that's underpinned by our values of safety, honor, and commitment. And I think that helps you to see where our culture as a company then stands behind biodiversity as important to our communities. So this is our public position on biodiversity. Sometimes it's easy to say that Phillips 66 recognizes the importance of healthy ecosystems. I think that's something everyone could agree with pretty well, and that we want to improve those ecosystems near our operations over time. So how do we go about doing that? Phillips 66 are not the experts on biodiversity. We don't have the strength in numbers to bring that forward in all cases, so we have long-standing partnerships. So this year we've given $3 million to environmental initiatives. Approximately 60% of that is in biodiversity. I've listed some of the organizations that we have worked with to partner on these topics. You can find more details on these in our sustainability report. That's another thing as you think about partnering with companies. How do we report externally? How do we share those stories? That's a little different than when you're talking to government agencies or communities. So I think that's something that you want to think about. We're beholden to our shareholders, and we're sharing that information out through those company reports. I am now, look at the map on the screen. These are some of our associations, partnerships, and I am going to pop up below that where our Phillips 66 operations are located. And what hopefully you saw with that here, I can flip back and forth. Joni told me the red button, green button, so I've got power here. The message that I want to deliver here, and so if you're not where Phillips 66 works, you might look to other companies that we try to work with the communities that are near our operations or where we market our products or where our employees live, work, and play. So you can see some of where we are trying to partner in that. We try to work with national organizations, then large organizations that can have the proven ability to deliver at that scale. From our sustainability report, again, I can say in 2022, we had 3,000 acres of estuaries and habitats that were enhanced by our collaboration with these conservation organizations and partners. And that has benefited thousands of species of birds, reptiles, amphibians, and butterflies. We say that birds are our barometer, so it's important for these wetlands ecosystems and the work that we do there. One more proof point that I love to share and why it's so important to gather with folks with the environmental mindset and know-how and some of our industrial partners. One of our favorite things that I see on here are many miles of pipeline, so that's a linear run of things. And we could understand through our partners, we're very good at maintaining those pipelines, monitoring for corrosion and integrity of the pipelines. But we learned from partners how to manage the space around those pipelines, many linear miles, thousands of linear miles, for monarch butterflies. So some small changes for us in how we treat the area, when we mow, how we mow, can make a very positive impact for the butterflies, and just changes in a way that's very easy for us to do as Phillips 66. So that's where the partnership, thank you. The partnerships and the powers of all of you to educate us, for us to be, again, towards that biodiversity environmental challenge that Phillips 66 wants to be a part of. Sometimes it takes guidance from those who are the experts in the room. While it's usually not a deciding factor in where we give our dollars, it is important. I wanted to talk about employee involvement. So another thing as a company is we want to retain our employees. We want them to love working for our company. If you can tie your employees to the community where they work, they are going to be more long-standing members of our company. So if you have ecological projects that involve us getting to dig in the dirt, plant trees, pull invasive species. I heard one plea that was going to make that a competition for us. That helps us with our employee base. So we are looking for places where we can give money, make an impact, but also use that, again, to that and, adding the and of help with our employee retention. and our employee happiness help with our morale. It's great to get out into the environment. These I just put up two. I mean, we talked about $4.3 million for Ducks Unlimited. We also have a number of projects that are at a much smaller scale. So here are two that I just wanted to highlight. So one is a freshwater well to help with endangered cranes. So it can pump 10 to 12 gallons per minute, and it operates about 4 to 6 hours per day in partial sun. And so that we partnered with Coastal Bend Bays and Estuaries program. Another project was to work with Texas A&M for freshwater inflow monitoring. As a scientist at heart, I love things here where they're gathering the data to inform freshwater inflow standards and management of that restoration. So again, that and of we're developing scientists with Texas A&M, we're gathering that data, it can lead towards better things for biodiversity. I'm just going to recap. Promise, Joni, I'm on my last slide. So highlighting what things are important to Phillips 66, and I tried to zoom out. I think that you would find a lot of commonalities in industry. Location near our facilities is important to us. Proven ability to execute and to measure help us tell a story in our sustainability reports at the end of the year. Conservation versus overhead, so that the dollars are going into meaningful impact and not into running the organization alone. And then as a small bonus, public access to the projects and in volunteerism. So thank you.
Howdy, everyone. I'm the last one, so just hang in there. One more presenter. My name is Taylor Keys. As Joni mentioned, I'm the programs director at Texan by Nature. Texan by Nature's mission is to advance conservation, so super excited to talk a little bit about what we're doing today. One way that we advance conservation is through our statewide collaboratives, such as the Texas Water Action Collaborative, or TexWAC. I'll be using that acronym as I'm talking, which matches companies and funders to conservation projects, particularly projects that benefit or impact water resources in some form or fashion. Through TexWAC, we build collaborative partnerships and relationships to align the goals of all stakeholders, but not only the goals, the timelines, budgets as well, in order to accelerate the conservation funding that positively benefits Texas's water resources. So we're trying to make conversations happen faster and funding move faster as well. The 18-month TexWAC pilot started in the Trinity River Basin and resulted in over $3 million in funding. Super exciting work. And based on that success, we have since expanded to the entire state of Texas at the start of this year. We're up to about $3.4 million in funding and working to get some more funding dollars through the end of this year as well. Texan by Nature facilitates the Water Action Collaborative. We manage the project matching services, bi-monthly stakeholder meetings. Would love for you all to join us. We have one coming up next week on Tuesday. And we also manage the messaging and communications as well. And in some cases, in working with our conservation partners and funders, we do provide project management, project development services, and fiscal sponsorship. Through TexWAC project matching, we're seeing each company's goals and key performance indicators, or KPIs, drive investments in shovel-ready projects through the collaborative. So for industry, going to talk about some high priority drivers, the first one of which is location. So we've heard Gabi talk about that, looking for projects in your area where you operate. So is the company able to make a connection between the project location and their operations? For example, are they in the same river basin? Can they make that hydrological connection to their operations? We're also seeing companies focus on making investments in at-risk areas, for example, where water supply may not meet the growing demand as our population in Texas continues to grow. Additionally, there's a need, we talk a lot about data today, for projects to articulate their quantitative impact to provide alignment with those funders' goals, because companies are utilizing, as Joni said, these projects investments as part of their global strategy in regards to sustainability. We are also seeing that a lot of companies have cost-benefit ranges that they're trying to stay under for their investments. For example, someone may be looking to stay under, we want to invest $1,000 per 1 million liters per year for a duration of 10 years, but those investment thresholds vary greatly, with many factors being taken into consideration. We're also seeing that most companies that we work with have goals. For example, they want to be net positive or net neutral by 2030. And as they scope those project investments, they're looking to build a portfolio of benefits that not only gets them to 2030, but beyond 2030 as well. So they're planning accordingly, making sure those projects line up that they're investing in. And also thinking long-term, companies are looking for projects that typically provide a minimum of 10 years of benefits, so where the company can claim, for example, those 100 million gallons per year annually over that duration of 10 years. This also gives a certainty to companies that they aren't going to invest in something and it's developed the next year as well. Other investment drivers we're seeing include the social aspect, so Gabi touched on getting their employees involved, but people are also looking to invest in projects, especially as it relates to project areas near underserved or historically disadvantaged communities. And through TechSWAC, we've seen upwards of $1 million invested collaboratively by multiple funders, where these folks are coming together, they're putting multiple eggs in one basket and investing in a project. Two examples of this work are Ducks Unlimited, their wetland work, and longleaf pine restoration led by Texas Longleaf Team in collaboration with private landowners. At Texan by Nature, we believe that our quality of life and economic prosperity is dependent on the conservation of our natural resources. It's an ecosystem that needs to be looked at holistically, and it's how our partners like Ducks Unlimited, Texas Longleaf Team, and many others in the room are approaching their projects as an ecosystem. So you may ask yourself, what do all of these projects have in common, and why is it working? To start, there's alignment of project and funder goals. We've talked a lot about that today. There's also clear impact and benefit metrics and monitoring efforts. This is inclusive of making sure that baseline data is getting captured during and after the project is implemented. This enables database reporting to funders. There's also comprehensive budgets and plans that include worst-case scenario cost. This makes sure that the time it takes to manage a project is covered and helps mitigate any risk of going over budget. And there's also collaborative partnerships at play, which we've talked a lot about today. So there's strong relationships between conservation organizations, community, businesses, and landowners that make for a successful project. And Justin talked today, we live in Texas, really big, lots of private lands, 95% of which is privately owned. And these conservation efforts on private lands present these large-scale conservation and restoration opportunities that benefit all Texans. That's why engaging not only our landowners today, but the new generations of landowners is so important for the conservation of our natural resources. There's also collaborative funding. So again, these folks are coming together and they're sharing these benefits. This is also a risk mitigation strategy. So companies aren't putting all of the investment that they have for the year into one project. They're able to invest in multiple projects as part of that project portfolio. And last but not least, all of these projects include education, application of best practices, strong metrics, and ultimately alignment to global reporting. This is a successful formula for building a strong reputation, garnering investment, scaling, and replicating. So what does this look like when pen meets paper? Ducks Unlimited is an expert in this, so if you're a conservation organization in the room, you want to make a business case for a project, go talk to the folks that are here today. For example, if you invest $100,000, you get 5.39 million gallons of water per year for a duration of 10 years, and that includes reporting. Sounds like a good deal if you're a business. Super clear and concise way to align the goals and timelines of all parties involved. But unfortunately, for most projects that we get submitted to the Water Action Collaborative, we're not seeing this for a variety of reasons. Across all of our programs, not just the Water Action Collaborative, we often see these gaps and challenges for conservation industry. For conservation, we often see a lack of capacity and expertise to develop a project, implement a project, monitor, or report on a project. There's also a lack of looking forward and outward to develop a comprehensive plan that includes all aspects of monitoring, control groups, baseline, post, to verify any of those estimates or claims the groups are making. We also see a lot of great projects come our way, but there's often a lack of, again, quantifying and articulating that impact and the benefits of the projects, which makes it super difficult to make the business case to funders that are interested. If projects do articulate these benefits, it's often not up-leveled in a way that anyone can understand if they're not familiar with the context of the project, or they're not tailoring their presentation to the audience. So how can we make that connection? We're also seeing very low, unrealistic budgets when organizations pride themselves on being volunteer-run when they need staff time and capacity funded to get the project done. Related, there's a lack of forward thinking when it comes to adaptive management and ensuring that the projects have enough funds to adapt restoration strategies and implement new technologies for best practices as they evolved. Due to these gaps, there can be a lot of risk, and oftentimes our partners don't articulate how they're going to mitigate these risks at hand. And unfortunately, we're still seeing a lack of collaboration and continued working in silos when it comes to data and best practices that, if done, could uplift all organizations. So excited that all of y'all are here today. For industry, there's often a lack of sharing information-related goals, how the investments are made, or what frameworks are used. This can make it difficult to find projects that align. Companies want to report on the science-based metrics and the data, but often don't have the funding or want to allocate the funding for the research and monitoring it takes to get there. So conservation orgs, make sure you're writing this into your budgets, and companies would love to see y'all fund that work. There's also typically different funding pools to pull from companies. Is it coming from a philanthropic budget, operational, sustainability budget? And how does that change the amount available and the requirements of that funding? As we work with individuals from different offices like sustainability, marketing, government relations, philanthropy, a lot of y'all are here today. Across the company, when we're talking to folks, sometimes these folks talk about the company's goals and what they invest in differently, so it can be confusing to our conservation partners when presenting a project. And as all of y'all reflect on today, I would encourage everyone to think about these gaps and the gaps that you're facing in your own role, and how can we all come together to address these challenges, learn from each other, and better collaborate as conservation industry leaders. Next, I'm going to touch on one way that Texan by Nature is bridging gaps in data articulation and reporting. Again, we talked a lot about data today. It's a driver and a common language. Data-driven decisions are vital for folks to understand the business case and invest in these conservation projects that positively benefit our quality of life, our economic prosperity, and natural resources. By utilizing trusted data sources, defendable and accurate statements can be made by leaders on the positive return on conservation that local boots on the ground efforts have, thus pushing the needle forward and making that global change. Unfortunately, science-based data on the benefits and impact of conservation projects is not reported in a way that's usable by industry or can be non-existent. To address this challenge, Texan by Nature created the ROC Index, Return on Conservation Index, to easily communicate the conservation impact as a global sustainability strategy. The ROC Impacts maps conservation projects, aligning their impacts to a standardized goal framework that is followed by most corporate stakeholders, which are the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or UN SDGs. To quantify the economic benefits, we collaborated with ecosystem service valuation experts, Ecometrics. Ed Pinero is here today. Let's see. Here's an example of recently created ROC Index from our work with Ducks Unlimited to quantify the comprehensive benefits of the Chenier Plain restoration effort. This is just one row, but make sure you check them out in the lobby. These ROC indexes were created to accelerate funding mechanisms, to answer the question, what is the quantitative impact, and to inform data-based decisions on local conservation investment in an understandable, standardized format. And you may be wondering what the ROC Index can result in. Well, I have a success story to share with you. In 2021, we began working with Texas Longleaf Team through our Conservation Wrangler program. Jenny Sanders is somewhere out there today. She's the coordinator at Texas Longleaf Team. Their organization was the first that we piloted the ROC Index with to calculate the ecosystem service benefits of restoring longleaf pine in East Texas. In 2022, Jenny identified a project opportunity with a landowner in Trinity County, and our team worked with Dr. Matt McBroom to calculate or estimate the volumetric water benefits of the project. The why it's working that I talked about earlier was in place. From there, we created a funding proposal that we presented through TechSWAC, and in collaboration with Bonneville Environmental Foundation, we identified a group of funders, some of which are here today. The Coca-Cola Foundation, Silk, Google, Meta, Microsoft, all came together to collaboratively invest over $970,000 to restore 2,000 acres of longleaf pine. Monitoring is a very important part of this project to verify those volumetric water benefit estimates. Raven Environmental Consulting, Brett Lawrence and Ross Carey are working closely with the landowners to manage this restoration project. Everything's in progress, and we're actively collecting data. So again, that baseline during post-implementation monitoring is critical to the success of this project over the duration of the next 8 to 12 years. This is an excellent example of what successful collaborative conservation looks like, and is a model I'm sure will continue to be replicated. Okay, last slide. As we reflect on all of the amazing presentations and connections made today, I just wanted to pose these questions to ask yourself as you look at your projects, funding strategies, and partnerships. Are there partners, resources, or research that supports quantifying your impact? Do you have that comprehensive plan and budget in place? Is the budget more comprehensive than just moving dirt or planting trees? Does it include that staff time, all the monitoring, reporting, and messaging that you need to make that project successful? And how do you articulate your impact? Could it be made clearer and more concise so the stakeholder that you're trying to reach or fund your project can easily understand? As we look toward the future, we envision a Texas where every Texan is involved in conservation, and that future is collaborative, and we hope you'll join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, Gabi, and Taylor. So at this time, we will take questions from the audience and from online if you want to submit via the YouTube stream or info@texanbynature.org. We'll start in the audience. We have one right here, Estella. And do we have one right here ready to go, Orby?
I'll ask a virtual question if that's okay.
Yep.
Just want to get the folks that are online plugged in as well. So this one is from Michael from the live stream. Clearly, Phillips 66 understands the importance of conservation as shown by their action and efforts. What is the largest barrier that companies have for providing support to conservation efforts?
I think one of the challenges is with the breadth of opportunities that are there, trying to make a really good bet on it's an organization that can deliver, and then trying to make the case always to our shareholders that those actions for the company, the dollars, have been very valuable. So having the story to tell at the end of it.
I know we've talked a lot about collaboration, and by nature of having so many different organizations involved, there's bound to be differing priorities, right? So my question is, how do you, from your perspective, navigate those differing priorities in creating the most effective and impactful partnerships?
Kevin, can we start with you? You guys have so many partners working together on a lot of your project, but in particular the Chenier Plain, and there are so many opportunities for conservation efforts. How do you guys prioritize and choose what to do first and which partners to involve first?
Well, again, I think, as I said at the end, the DU doesn't really lead any of the efforts. We're more of a facilitator for the lead agencies or partners who have the project and project idea. Obviously, for us, we align ourselves with the partner and the projects that fulfill the DU mission. I mean, the DU mission is about waterfowl and people, right? But there's obviously there's really, like, say for example, the state and federal agencies, that's a pretty close connection, right? But there also are connections with other partners where it's not so close. It's actually more overlapping. And so and that's definitely in the ESG, am I saying that right? ESG kind of realm of things, right? And so we usually, we might partner with, say, Texas Parks and Wildlife on a project, and then we realize that there's other opportunities for other partners to be involved, and we have a pretty good, we have a pretty large organization, right? We're not just in Texas, we're all over the nation. So we have both biologists and conservationists and development staff that have pretty large networks, and so we kind of reach from within and then reach from outside of our own to find the partners that can maybe help put projects together, finish them out, get them implemented on the ground.
Thank you. Gabi, what about you at Phillips 66? How do you prioritize?
Oh, so I was going to answer the question of challenges in the projects, communication, I think, between the projects and making sure that you are speaking the same language. So that's when something like Texan by Nature may be able to help out. We come at things from a very different perspective from industry versus an environmental group, but we share very much the mission in the same way. So even here, when it's a return on conservation, those are weaving in business terms and things we're comfortable with in a way that also is comfortable to environmentalists and working in that space. And prioritization is always a challenge, so I'll let Taylor handle that one.
Awesome. Yeah, in our role where we sit between conservation industry for our program, the Texas Water Action Collaborative, as an example, we survey both the conservation side and the business side to best understand what is the conservation group looking for in regards to funding, and what is the funder looking for in regards to funding a project. We take, again, a surveying and scoring approach, so we let the data lead us in the best direction, and from that we're able to narrow down a list of over 60 projects to say, hey Gabi, here's 10 projects that best align with your mission and goals, and we're just very transparent about where projects are at with their monitoring and reporting, the funding that they need if there's any risks involved, and that's the way that we go about prioritizing all of our efforts and projects for our programs.
Awesome. Estella.
Thank you. I was born in West Texas so long ago, we used to drive to the edge of town and turn off our headlights and drive by the light of the night sky. I hope some of you remember that Texas as well. I want to thank Joni and Ms. Bush for today. This conference has been wonderful. I especially appreciate the emphasis upon education and partnerships. And that raises a question for us today, and that is, how many of us in this room really want to live in Texas with 20 million more people? And notice I didn't say 20 million more Texans. You don't get to be a Texan by driving across the border. And that raises the question, is the immigration problem in the state really on the southern border or on the western border? And the northern border and the eastern border?
I just got here from Oklahoma. We're okay too.
We're glad you're here. But here's the question. Part of me loves the challenge of trying to figure out how we're going to deal with this. Where are we going to find the water? All the land in Texas that's open for development is west of Fort Worth. All the water is in East Texas. So we've got to filter groundwater in West Texas or desal along the Gulf. That's very expensive. My question for each of you today is what gives you hope? Because what gives me hope is the people in this room right now. People who understand these partnerships, who understand the need to collaborate, who understand the need to preserve Texas and make it possible for other people to come here without destroying Texas and destroy our way of life. So that's my question to the three of you. What gives you hope today, right now, that we can actually meet the challenge of 20 million new Texans? I don't have to worry about it. I'm 72. I'm not going to be here in 2050. But I've got 4 grandchildren who live here. 4 grandchildren. And I'm concerned for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Taylor, we're going to start with you, actually.
Perfect. Well, what gives me hope is that there's endless opportunities. All of you in the room are an ecosystem people that can all work together, and I think it's an exciting time to be involved in conservation, and companies and just conservation organization keep stepping up the bar and challenging the status quo as we talked about earlier today. So that's what gives me hope.
I may just be a hopeful person, but I see so many opportunities and great things. So previous to immigrating to Texas from Oklahoma, I was the director of our local science fair. And so seeing young people and their talents and their enthusiasm for science, I know that the pipeline is strong to greatness. I was also working in our research organization prior to moving into this role, and innovation. We've heard some talk of AI, the speed at which things can improve and change, our ability to look at data in new ways to measure, monitor. I think we have great reason to be very optimistic, especially when you partner that with the scientists, the advocates, the people in this room who can help push that forward. So yes, there are big problems in front of us. I think we need to have our eyes wide open to that with growing populations,
just the amount of drought warnings that you see in many areas, but I think we have the right talent, the right future talent to meet those challenges, so great hope.
So I used to work for Texas Parks and Wildlife, and so I've had a perspective of both a nonprofit agency and also being from a nonprofit group and also from the agency, governmental agency. And so when I first started, I kind of, with Texas Parks and Wildlife, my career, I noticed that there was definitely a kind of a lean times within the agency and even within the federal agencies as well. And as I got into DU and started, the lean times were starting to, it seemed like all of a sudden there'd be, not just me, I'm not saying it happened just because I moved the Ducks Unlimited, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I've noticed a big flip, right? A big flip with not only within the, like, there's more, it seems to be more funding available from within the, going through the public agencies and also coming from outside groups. There seems to be more interest amongst the public to handle all these, tackle all these issues that we're talking about today, clean water, climate change issues, all those kind of things are being watched by the collective public. At least that's what I've noticed, and people are interested. When I was going through college, it seemed like I was just part of a clique, right? And like, oh, you're a wildlife biologist? Well, what do you guys really do? And so, but I think I just see now it seems like the collective public, the younger generations are all interested in it. And I think that's where I find my hope. And I think, and for me also here today, looking at all these new faces and new people I never heard, organizations I haven't really interacted with before, who are all interested, that's also very cool and also very promising for me, and I think for Ducks Unlimited to possibly, new partnerships to also introduce all you guys to different, our partnership networks to see what kind of good work we can do and accomplish in the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years.
Stella. We have a question from the live stream from David. Taylor mentioned that expertise is a bottleneck on conservation organizations' ability to execute projects of interest to industry. Could you explain what type of expertise is most needed?
Great question. I think that can range depending on the organization, the size of the organization. Nonprofits can wear a lot of different hats, so they may not have a full-time development person. They may have a project that's rooted in science but not have a biologist or scientist on staff, so that can be a challenge when it comes to actually articulating those benefits. And if those organizations don't have a marketing or communications expert, for instance, but they have a scientific expert, it can be hard to take that scientific language and translate it into something that anyone can understand. So it really ranges. It depends on the size of the organization, but it really raises the flag. Organizations really need to be including staff time and capacity into their budgets so they can fund those roles and positions to make those projects a reality.
Absolutely, and we've talked a lot about water today, and a coming bottleneck is hydrologist time to really understand the impact of some of these water projects such that we can open up operational funding from industry for these projects moving forward. So keeping that in mind, that very few conservation groups have access to some of the hydrologist experts that are needed for projects of the future. We got Orvie.
Hey there, over here on the right. I just wanted to say, one, thank you for doing the panel. Two, talking about translating, interpreting buzzwords. For example, a lot of people, they're not a big fan of the word conservation these days. It has kind of a negative connotation with the general public. Are there any buzzwords that, if you're approaching a commercial group or an industry about partnering, are there any buzzwords you think you should include or you should avoid?
I'll go first. I think a great practice is no matter what funder you're approaching, check out their sustainability report, the webpage, talk in the language they're talking in, and it never hurts to define the terms that you're using. I mean, if your organization uses the terminology conservation, you can define what that means to you, and it's good for them to be aware. Because they may have a different thing in mind. As Joni said, we all define it differently, so the more data we can use and the more alignment that we can make, we can all get on the same page and hopefully talk the same language at some point. So.
Yeah, I can't think of any particular buzzwords to include or avoid. I think we're looking more for, is this an organization that would bring a lawsuit in the future, or is going to be lobbying in a way that we don't want our company name to be attached? So we're going to be looking at things like that a lot more than if you use the term conservation or any buzzword that would be. I can't think of anything in that space.
I guess I'm not really certain about the, there's a lot of, so Ducks Unlimited also includes a lot of not just biologists, but also engineers. We have engineers in-house, and I will say that sometimes some of the words that are kind of used to talk about some of our dirt projects, and I don't know, even dirt can be considered a negative word, I guess, in some folks, right? But like, you know, like the word construction, stripping, things like this are just, we have to, I find myself having to be careful when I talk to certain partners about what, you know, the actual technical means and methods that we use to do some conservation, restoration projects on the ground. And so it's another challenge, and you do have to sort of like have some, like maybe, you know, I'm sure it'd be nice if there was more one-on-one talking where you have a chance to be able to, you know, relay what you're really getting at, and maybe help the other partner, the new partner perhaps in the room, right, understand what these activities really mean in the context of the whole restoration project.
Thank you. So we're going to have one quick lightning question, 30 seconds with each person. If you think about the initiative that you guys shared today, the specific project and the reason you were here talking, what is one thing that you learned in working through that project or initiative or strategy that the folks in the audience can apply when they leave here today? Taylor?
Oh, I don't want to copy anyone else that went earlier, but I think it is the human dimension and meeting people where they're at and understanding those perspectives, and how do you get through to that person and use the right communication strategy to reach them. So I encourage you to develop a really big toolbox to hold all those strategies in that you can use with all of these different partners.
I think the importance of metrics in the biodiversity and conservation space that go beyond number of acres. So we're always seeking metrics that can define a project that we can talk to shareholders and investors, to the public. So helping to define, and that is something we would look to all of you to help us with.
I think for me, I think bringing up new, being able to keep new blood into the process of these projects and keeping them up to speed on what's happened in the past, because some of these projects can go for a long period. I've been working on some projects that have been around for 10 years and haven't been done yet, and there's a lot of problems and pitfalls that have caused it to delay. So it's like having the new whenever you're bringing on new staff and within the organization or maybe in a partnership organization, hopefully you can, you know, instill in them all the backstory on the projects that can help them understand what they need to be doing to avoid those pitfalls down the road with even the same project or a new project that they get involved in. These projects, like Todd has mentioned in the video, Todd Marandino, he mentioned, you know, the restoration it's a marathon, not a sprint. And some of these projects are really like that. It takes a while, and having the staff always fully engaged, or having the partners fully engaged, people move in and out of their roles, right? And so whenever new ones get in, get them back, get them into the fold, get them engaged so that they can keep that project moving along when maybe you move on to something else.
Thank you, guys. So engagement and metrics. Kevin, Gabi, and Taylor for the final panel of the day.
I'll tell you what makes this place special. The wide open spaces, the cold, fresh water of the springs and the rivers. It's a hotspot of biodiversity.
People who live out here in Bandera definitely have a bit of that Western pioneer spirit. We just find it remarkable and are drawn to making it home. It's very unique.
it gives us something breathtaking to observe at the end of our day, which is the beauty of the night sky.
Dark skies are important to every living thing out here. It really isn't just about astronomy. It's about preserving a balance. We are not exempt from the laws of nature just because we're human beings. All living things rely on the cycling of daylight and darkness. These are rules that can't be denied.
We call the hill country the edge of night because it is on that cusp of dark, pure night skies and large metropolitan urban areas. And unfortunately, that line is moving in the wrong direction, headed west, encroaching on those perfect night skies. And it's all because of light pollution. Preventing that negative impact to human health, to the economy, to the environment is the underlying mission of the Night Sky program at Hill Country Alliance.
Ecotourism plays a huge role in the economy out in the western regions of the hill country particularly. The cost of light pollution is unseen often to most people. They don't even think about it. But in the context of what I do for a living of rebuilding native prairies, if someone takes the darkness away, I can't put it back. Light pollution is bad for business. With extreme amounts of artificial lighting, you will have less and less native insects. It also impacts the native flora, the plants, because there's less pollination that can occur. And so there's slowly this changeover to what might as well be called an ecological desert.
In the state of Texas, we estimate that $300 million is wasted every year shining light up into the night sky. So through the Night Sky program, the Hill Country Alliance is working to educate the public about what light pollution is and how we can prevent it. Overall, it's finding a way to combat light pollution and reclaim our night sky. So the Night Sky program helps grow and foster what we call Friends of the Night Sky groups. These are assemblies of volunteers, people that live in these communities, that interact with their city and their fellow residents. A lot of our groups work with business owners or residential owners, landowners, to improve their lighting. Those groups will move forward to help their communities enact or improve on already existing outdoor lighting ordinances.
There are such simple incremental steps that can be taken that make a huge difference to bring down the lights.
Proper color temperature of bulb, proper shielding, directing the light where it needs to go. If they can turn off their lights, we recommend putting them on timers or having them be motion detected. Starting at home is a great fundamental step, and then we share this information with other folks.
When people come to Bandera, they want to look up at the sky and see the stars at night. The Night Sky effort is one way we can take care of ourselves and protect this place in the world the way it is and has been.
At least half a dozen times during the year, we bring folks together for star parties. It's a great opportunity to experience the night sky for themselves, to learn about what it is we're trying so hard to protect while under what it is we're trying to protect.
There's something that when I look up at a dark night sky, it reminds me of wildflowers, the massive depth and diversity, the infinity of it is mind-boggling. There's so many complex issues facing society now across the whole globe, but one of the simplest things we can do is fix this light pollution. Just imagine if we could get that under our belt, what would we do next about all these problems we're facing? We could tackle them one at a time. Let's go.
So as we move into the wrap-up phase of the day, I want to thank UPG Video for the 5th year working with us on the Conservation Wrangler videos and just the amazing imagery and storytelling of bringing these to life each year. So thank you to UPG. So from my perspective, what an amazing day it's been. I want to thank the speakers, each one of you who came and sat on stage. I thank you for your time in being here, your time in preparing, your expertise, your candor, your knowing that you had no idea what questions were going to be asked. I really appreciate you being here today. Thank you to the Texan by Nature team for being brilliant, steadfast, passionate, amazing each and every single day. I am very lucky to work with each and every one of you. Thank you guys. And thank you again to all of our sponsors and members for believing in this summit each year and believing in all of our programs. We couldn't do this without you. We've grown over the last few years, and we are deeply appreciative of the ones who have become deeper, richer partners who are working on strategies and supporting more and more of the conservation community. Thank you. So hopefully you're at a point in thinking about how to apply everything that was talked about today and what you're going to leave here and do. And I'm going to give a shameless plug for a couple of ways to get involved. If you are a conservation organization, our Conservation Wrangler applications are open. So if you're thinking about that, grab one of the Texan by Nature team members. We're happy to talk to you about that. Those applications are due the last day of January, and usually we announce the first week of April. There's also our Conservation Partner Program. You can find more information about that at texanbynature.org. That is a free program to get involved with other conservation partners across the state of Texas. And for others, particularly industry or anyone else in the room, you can look at membership, Texan by Nature 20 submission, and we'll talk about Texan by Nature 20 here in a minute, the Texas Water Action Collaborative that Taylor mentioned, or the Texas Collaborative Conservation Network that you will be hearing more about soon. There are many options to get engaged and collaborate more deeply. I hope you will look at those. So at Texan by Nature, Taylor mentioned this a little bit earlier in her presentation, but we envision a future where every single business, every single Texan is engaged in conservation. Every single one of us. We're all making sure that we're the cleanest state, not the trashiest state. You can tell that that one hurt deep. We got to change that. It's not the Texas I know. So, we believe, as exemplified today, we believe in science and data. We believe in those approaches. We believe in action. We believe in reporting results. We believe in building on what's working, not reinventing the wheel, but building on what's working and working together to do that. We believe in removing barriers so that each of us can work together towards a future that is vibrant for every single one of us. We believe that every single one of us is Texan by nature. Whether you're part of the staff, or you're a partner, or a member, or someone listening today, you are Texan by nature. And every single person in this room, you're a leader in your respective field, in your industry, and we all have an opportunity to start and broaden our impact today. So starting now, we have 12 months until we get together again, right? I broke that down earlier. 12 months, 52 weeks, 365 days, over 500,000 minutes until we come back together next year. So how are we going to measure this year? We heard some really interesting nuggets throughout the day. We heard, do big things. Can we do big things in the next 12 months? We heard, be adaptive. Really liked that one. Believe that others want to do the right thing and meet them where they are. Help them come along with you. Work in a way that we, as conservation NGOs, no longer need to exist, right? That's the end goal, that we don't need to come back together because we fixed it, and then we set our sights on a different problem and we went there, right? So work ourselves out of a job and focus on that and. Focus on the and in every project and every program that we're doing. So at Texan internally, we like to ask why. We like to ask what if. We like to ask how. We ask a lot of questions. So our team dynamics are interesting, right? It's always the, well, why? Or how's that going to work? Or what if these folks got together? And so I encourage you to ask why, you to ask what if, you to ask, okay, what is this going to look like for me in the future? Will you apply or evolve, embrace a new technology? Like the TDS Waste Wizard, what can we learn from that? That's pretty cool. And I mean, I want a personal trash goalie as well. But, will you build a new coalition or start participating in one more thoroughly? We'll stop the wish cycling, I liked that term. We'll stop the awe deprivation. How are we going to get engaged in coalitions that make forward impact? Will we embrace deepening workforce and community expectations? Gabi mentioned they're looking for opportunity for their workforce to get more involved so that their morale is higher. So think about those opportunities within your own conservation areas. Will we step back and better understand personal, organizational, community role in broader systems? Will our partners do the same? Will we help them do that? Will we meet them where they are so that they can come there with us? There's no shortage of opportunity today, none. You can turn to the person next to you, and I guarantee you they have an idea on how you can get involved. Even if it's turning off your lights, that one's easy, it's a switch. There are ways for you to get involved. Doesn't matter what your passion is, your geography, your industry, if you immigrated from Oklahoma, it doesn't matter. There are opportunities everywhere. So I challenge each of you to join us. And I issue this challenge each year, and I'm so excited because we continue to grow and people are answering this challenge. But I challenge you, join us. Join us in creating a future where Texas is known globally as the model of conservation, where we're all working together towards innovations that are changing the world, where we're collaborating deeply, and we're prospering, both in natural resources, economic growth, and our human health. I challenge you to help us do that. We have more than 500,000 minutes until we come together again. So let's make the most of them. Thank you. So a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to speak with a group of high school-aged young men. Anybody worked with high school-aged kids lately? It's interesting, right? Sometimes they talk back, sometimes they don't. And they all look at you like you have 3 years. But besides that, I asked them to describe leadership in a single word. And I was really curious what I was going to get from 14 and 15-year-old young men. Was it going to be power? What was it going to be? But I was pleasantly surprised because there were a couple of words that came up repeatedly when they gave me their one word that described leadership. And those couple of words were encouraging, respectful, patient, kind. Today we talked a lot about vocabulary and how we define different terms and different things mean different definitions to different people. But I am certain if you look up the definition of leadership, you will not only find the young men's terms of encouraging, respectful, patient, and kind, but you'll also find grace-filled, committed, passionate, and knowledgeable. These are all attributes of our next speaker. She is someone who founded our organization based on her knowledge, based on her desire to learn more and to act, based on her passion for improving the world. She's a unique mix, as you guys, most of you know this, of an educator and a lifelong learner, a lifelong reader, but also someone who is committed to public service. Whether she's lending her voice to dark sky initiatives, native plant education, pollinator needs, or any of Texan by Nature's other programs, whether she's taking action of her own or encouraging everyone on the Texan by Nature team to continue serving our partners in our mission, she is handling all of them with the leadership words and all of them with grace and vision for the future. So please join me in thanking former First Lady and Texan by Nature founder, Laura Bush, for her vision, and join me in welcoming her to the stage.
Thank you, Joni, and thank you again for just a really wonderful program. I thought it was terrific today. Everybody was interesting, and they all represented every part of our state. So thanks a lot. I was interested in the last night skies, lights in the night skies, because one of the things that we've done here in Dallas, over 1 billion birds migrate through Texas. And they're disoriented by all the tall buildings with their lights on all night. And they fly into those windows and commit suicide. So there are groups that go around underneath those tall buildings in downtown Dallas and Houston, I think, as well, and pick up the birds that have died. And so this year we've had the lights out during the time of the migration, and nearly everybody in all those big buildings downtown have agreed to turn their lights off during the time of migration. So it's also terrific in the middle of the country. I want to thank Joni especially for your terrific leadership of Texan by Nature and your wonderful staff, which have made Texan by Nature into a respected national brand. Other states are looking at our model as a framework for their own conservation plans, and I'm proud to be part of it all. Robert Horton, Ray Engel, Elaine Magruder, Adair Margot, Carolyn Miller, Cynthia Pickett Stevenson, Jamie Shai, and Tamara Trail, thank you all very much for your commitment to conservation, and thanks for your friendship. There are a lot of familiar faces here today as well, and thanks to all of you for your longtime support for Texan by Nature. Thanks especially to our sponsors and Texan by Nature members. Your generosity and enthusiasm enables the work we do, and I'm grateful. I also see a lot of new faces here. Thanks for joining us today. I'm thrilled that you've come to learn about Texan by Nature and also to contribute to our conservation efforts represented today. Finally, I'd like to recognize our impressive speakers. Thank you for educating and inspiring us. It's clear to me that the leaders in this room share the Texan by Nature spirit. We all know that the future of conservation lies in working together and modeling new partnerships for our state, for our country, and for the world. So I encourage all of you to go back to your organizations and adopt a practice or share an idea that you learned today. Like many of you, I was inspired by the conservationist and naturalist in my life. As an only child growing up in West Texas, my appreciation for our state's natural landscape started early and came from my mother, Jenna Welch, who, if she wasn't reading, could be found outside. My mother was a naturalist who remembered the name of every wildflower. She was my Girl Scout leader when we earned our bird badges. She went on to become a very knowledgeable, self-taught bird watcher and joined the Midnats, that's the Midland Naturalists, who were all bird watchers and conservationists. Mother would often stop me while driving through town to point out a red-tailed hawk or a white-winged dove as it flew across the Midland sky. I'll have to admit it, I've found it slightly irritating as a teenager. Midland, of course, has a huge sky, uninterrupted by trees. Midland's motto is "The sky's the limit." Imagine growing up in a town with that motto. Maybe that's why Midland produced 2 presidents. I remember when the banned DDT signs started showing up on the telephone poles in Midland. I knew it was my mother who had put them up. They came in her Audubon magazine. DDT was a poison that wasn't just bad for bugs, it was bad for everything. And that's when I became interested in protecting our natural resources. I've hiked in a national park for over 30 some odd years with my childhood friends that I grew up with in Midland. We've hiked and camped in all the beautiful national parks from Denali in Alaska to Acadia in Maine. Though in recent years, we've tended to do a bit more glamping. When I was First Lady, I advocated for the protection of our lands and oceans through the National Park Service and the Marine Debris Initiative. In fact, in 2006, George designated Papahanaumakuakea Marine National Monument in the northwest Hawaiian Islands, the largest highly protected marine reserve in the world. In 2007, right after President Bush designated Papahanaumakuakea, I visited Midway Island with my friend and Texan by Nature co-founder, Reagan Gammon. We were near the site where George's dad, President George H.W. Bush, was picked up by a submarine after his plane was shot down during World War II. Reagan and I visited the island where the Laysan albatross were nesting. These are great big birds that nest on the ground because they don't have any predators on Midway Island, except for us. There were so many chicks in nest, we had to be careful where we stepped. The chicks know instinctively to stay in their nest while their parents skim the ocean for squid to feed them because their parents know them only by their location. Occasionally, we'd see a dead chick in its nest, and when we investigated and opened their little carcasses, we were shocked to find plastic debris, little tires from toy cars, bottle caps, even toothbrushes. Of course, many chicks still survived, but this made us realize how all the plastic we use ends up on the surface of the ocean. This plastic comes not just from the United States, but from everywhere people throw it out. We saw firsthand how important it is to recycle and to make sure that what we throw out doesn't end up in the Pacific or the Atlantic. Our trip to Midway Island, with its important role in our history, connects us to our past. The island shows us that the actions we take, even the way we dispose of trash thousands of miles away, affects the world we're leaving for our children and grandchildren. Though only 15 years ago, this trip came to mind while listening to the collaborative cleanup case study during Panel 3. The American Bird Conservancy SPLASH program addresses Texas' serious trash pollution problem and how harmful it is for wildlife. And we must recognize that our trash and plastics aren't just polluting the coast in Corpus or Houston or the Trinity River. These waters in Texas flow to the Gulf of Mexico, and the Gulf of Mexico flows to the Caribbean, and the Caribbean shares its water with the Atlantic Ocean. So the trash we litter here in Texas is polluting waters all over the world. Connections like this are part of the reason we started Texan by Nature. When George and I moved back to Texas from Washington, I started chatting with my friends Reagan Gammon and Catherine Armstrong. We wanted to protect the natural resources that provide sustenance, income, recreation, and beauty to this great state that we call home. We dreamed of bringing leaders from all sectors together to advance projects and initiatives that benefit Texans. And we wanted to highlight the good work already being done to make sure that it was replicated and supported and used as a model across our state and across the country. Today, when I look out at this room full of conservation leaders and experts representing various areas of industry, community, and conservation, I'd say, I think we did it. Texan by Nature is thriving, and I'm proud of the progress we're making together and the example we're setting in Texas and beyond. Each year, we come together at this summit to celebrate conservation leaders, and we remind each other of our responsibility to protect our natural world. If we all do our part, work together and support one another in doing so, the multiplier effect will be remarkable. Texan by Nature has had the privilege of working with 35 different conservation wrangler projects. These projects have set a high bar for conservation, and they've been examples of leaders and citizens making a difference where they are with the resources they have. I'd like to recognize our 2023 Texan by Nature Conservation Wranglers, Texas Wildlife Association, Caddo Lake Institute, American Bird Conservancy Splash Program, Hill Country Alliance Night Sky Program, and Ducks Unlimited Chenier Plain Restoration. Congratulations, and thank you all for all that you do. You're inspiring, and you're ensuring that everything continues to be bigger, brighter, and more beautiful in Texas. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much to Mrs. Bush. She is always such an inspiration. So to end the day, we actually need to stop virtual streaming, if we could get that stopped. And thank you to everyone who has joined us online. We look forward to continuing conversations with you in person throughout the year. I'm honored to end this day with celebration of the 2023 Texan by Nature 20. As some of you know, the Texan by Nature 20 recognized the best and most innovative work in conservation coming from industry. We look at 12 industries each year. We start with 2,000 companies to come up with the final 20 who exemplify work that can come from industry and conservation. Each year, an esteemed selection committee helps us choose the finalists. We narrow down from 2,000 companies to 60, and this committee spends a lot of time looking through and understanding the differences in what these companies are doing. The selection committee are leaders in their respective organizations and represent all industries honored by the Texan by Nature 20. If you're a part of that selection committee, could you stand up for me today, please? We should have a few in the room. Thank you very much. Very much appreciated. So this year, it's my delight to announce that Jetco and Hartke actually made the 2023 Texan by Nature 20 possible. Jetco underwrote our efforts this year by donating $1 per load transported through their Drive for Conservation program. This signified their commitment to sustainable practices and to their partners here in Texas. It's a privilege to share the stage with Kyle Christinek, President and CEO of Jetco Delivery, for the Texan by Nature 20 announcement. Kyle, please join me. You want to start right there.
All right, thank you, Joni. Just an incredible day. What an inspiration Ms. Bush is, and we're new to this, Jetco, but I'm very proud to be a small piece of this now. And I've told Joni before, if you know anything about the freight market right now, my checks aren't as big as I want them to be, but I'm working on that $1 per load thing. I'm working on it, I promise. Since 1976, Jetco has provided intermodal drayage, open deck, heavy haul, dry van, you name it, anything that needs moved on a truck throughout the country, into Mexico, as well as Canada. We launched the Drive for Conservation earlier this year with the intent to support future conservation and recognize the models and the work coming from our partners. I mean, truly inspirational. Some of the speakers today, all the honorees, congratulations. Maybe one day I'll be able to be a part of that a little bit more. But with over 170 million acres of land and global leadership across multiple industries, Texas leaders who see the value in partnering with conservation and integrating sustainability into their business create impact here and at home that truly change the world. We absolutely, as business leaders, which I know there are a lot here, we absolutely do have an influence. We can help change the world, and things like this that Joni and your team are doing are it's just phenomenal. And then now a big congratulations to the Texan by Nature 20. If you're an honoree, please make your way to the stage. I'm going to call everyone out. If you can, hold your applause to the end, and we'll have everyone line up right here, and then we're going to get some pictures. So stay up here with us after you get to the stage. Delighted to announce this. First up is Alamo Group. Next up is CMEX. They also want to get to the next happy hour stage, I'm sure, too. So, all right, Cirrus Logic. CPS Energy. Darling Ingredients. Desert Door Satol. Dallas Fort Worth International Airport. Holt Cat. JP Morgan. Mary Kay. Microsoft. Next Era Energy. North American Development Bank. Orsted. Overland Partners. PepsiCo. May have to have a couple layers here. Stantec. Texas Health Resources. Wayne Sanderson Farms. And finally, WM. Please join me in congratulating and thanking these leaders for their vision and leadership in conservation and sustainability.
Thank you again to the Texan by Nature 20. We're going to have you just stay, and then we're going to take a little bit more posed photo. For everyone else, thank you again for a wonderful day. Thank you to Kyle and Jetco for making this possible, this recognition. But this concludes the programming part of the day, so go find new partners. The happy hour starts outside. If you do have a card, please come and meet Jenny and Karina down here. We're going to line you up if you were given a card when you arrived today. If not, we'll see you outside. Happy hour is just out the back. So thank you guys very much.